Welcome, curious minds, to the Uncanny Valley podcast. Today we're setting sail on an exploration of, well, an extraordinary historical account from the mid-19th century.
That's right.
You've given us some really fascinating excerpts from this document. It's titled simply 20,000 leagues.txt. And our mission today is to navigate the mysteries of this unknown phenomenon that completely baffled the world back then.
It really did.
We'll delve into the revolutionary invention it kind of spawned and try to understand the mind of its incredibly enigmatic commander.
It's quite a journey we're embarking on.
Think of this as your essential shortcut to getting, incredibly well informed on one of those intriguing sagas out there.
Yeah.
Blending scientific inquiry and, let's be honest, thrilling adventure.
Absolutely. We're digging into the crucial insights from what was a truly pivotal moment in maritime history. For the world of 1866, these events weren't just news. No, they were described as a mysterious and puzzling phenomenon that profoundly agitated the maritime population.
Right. Agitated is a good word for it.
And this wasn't just confined to coastal towns. The excitement, the buzz, it reverberated even in the interior of continents.
Really? That far inland?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
It set the stage for this unparalleled series of events that would, frankly, challenge every known scientific understanding at the time and ultimately redefine human perception of what was even possible beneath the waves.
Okay, let's really unpack this initial phenomenon then. What exactly were people reporting seeing back in 1866, and how did these scattered sightings ignite such widespread, almost global public frenzy?
Well, the first sort of credible report started surfacing around July 20th, 1866. There was a steamer, the Governor Higginson. It was out on the water, and its crew spotted something genuinely unknown till then. Their logs described this immense creature that, get this, threw up from its blowholes columns of water mixed with air and vapor.
Huh. So like a whale, but different.
Exactly. And you might think, okay, maybe an isolated incident, a strange sighting. But just 3 days later, July 23rd, the Columbus, that's a ship from the West India and Pacific Steam Navigation Company hundreds of miles away in the Pacific,
Made similar observations.
strikingly similar. But what really startled everyone, the truly baffling part, was the creature's apparent surprising velocity.
How fast are we talking?
In just 3 days, it had seemingly covered over 700 nautical leagues. It appeared at two wildly distant points on the chart. That kind of speed just defied all known biological capabilities of the time.
700 nautical leagues in 3 days. That's almost incomprehensible speed for something described as being that large.
It is.
But it wasn't just the speed, was it? It kept showing up, and the sheer scale of the thing.
Absolutely. The mystery just deepened. So 15 days after that Columbus sighting, and an astounding 2,000 miles further off.
1,000 miles.
2,000 miles. Two more transatlantic ships, the Helvetia and the Shannon, they simultaneously signaled this monster to each other. They encountered it in the Atlantic.
Both at the same time.
At the same time, at 42 degrees 15 Urinate north latitude and 60 degrees 35 Urinate west longitude. These simultaneous, independent observations in such distant locations that really cemented the idea that something extraordinary was out there.
And these weren't small boats, the Shannon and the Helvetia.
Oh, no, not at all. They each measured 300 feet overall, pretty substantial ships for the era. Yet, based on all these multiple accounts, the experts at the time concluded that this mammal, as they thought of it, had a minimum length of more than 350 feet.
350 feet minimum. How does that compare to, say, known whales back then?
Well, that's the thing. The largest known whales, even the colossal ones found near the Aleutian Islands, places like Kulamak and Umgullich, they'd never exceeded 60 yards. That's about 180 feet.
So this thing was potentially double the size of the biggest known creature in the ocean.
At least. It was something entirely dramatically different in both scale and speed. Utterly unprecedented.
Okay, so we've got these escalating reports, multiple reliable sources, describing something enormous, incredibly fast, defying biology. How did this hit public opinion? I'm picturing a mix of awe, wild speculation, and probably a lot of outright disbelief.
That's pretty much it. Public opinion got sharply divided, and the whole phenomenon quickly became, well, the fashion. It was the topic of conversation globally.
Like a trend.
Exactly. Initially, you had the light-thinking people who just dismissed it. They jested upon the phenomenon. People sang of it in the cafes. It was ridiculed in the papers, even showed up on stage in farces.
Rest of jokes.
Lots of jokes. All kinds of outlandish stories circulated, some quite absurd, like this one, Mr. Harrington claiming he saw an enormous sea serpent back in 1857. It was just a carnival of skepticism and satire.
But that didn't last.
No, the levity faded pretty quickly, especially in, as the text calls them, grave practical countries such as England, America, and Germany.
Why them specifically?
Because they were getting these reports from their own reputable merchant marine captains, hard-headed, practical men. So they started to treat the matter more seriously. It really transitioned from being a funny story to a looming serious question.
And this brings up a really important point. What did the scientific community make of all this? The people who were supposed to have the answers. How did they even try to class this thing, given it flew in the face of everything they knew?
Well, as you can imagine, the scientific community was thrown into, a maelstrom of debate. The question of the monster, as it was called, it inflamed all minds. It sparked this interminable controversy between the credulous and the incredulous in the societies of savants and the scientific journals.
So, scientists arguing amongst themselves.
Vigorously. Editors of prestigious journals were publicly squabbling with believers in the supernatural or, just those asserting the possibility of something unknown. Meanwhile, satirical writers had a field day. They parodied the famous naturalist Linnaeus.
The father of taxonomy.
Right. Who famously said, "Nature did not make fools." These wits gleefully dismissed reports of krakens, mythical sea serpents, even giant whales like Moby Dick's. They called them other lucubrations of delirious sailors.
Lucubrations, meaning like wild imaginings.
Exactly. The wild thoughts or writings of sailors prone to tall tales. For a period in early 1867, it genuinely seemed like wit had conquered science. The question seemed buried, never to revive. The scientific establishment just couldn't fit the phenomenon into its existing boxes.
But then things took a really unsettling turn, didn't they? The mystery shifts from just being a scientific puzzle, something debated in journals, to a real tangible danger. Encounters went from baffling to, genuinely terrifying. People's lives were at stake.
Absolutely. The turning point really arrived in the first few months of 1867. That forced everyone, scientists and governments alike, to reconsider. It just wasn't an academic debate anymore or a funny topic for the cafes. It became a real danger seriously to be avoided.
How so? What changed?
The monster, or whatever it was, transformed in the reports into something even more unsettling. Descriptions changed to a small island, a rock, a reef, but a reef of indefinite and shifting proportions.
A shifting reef. That implies something solid, right? And mobile, not just a soft creature.
Precisely. That suggested a solid, moving object, not a biological entity as previously thought.
And these weren't just minor bumps we're talking about. The impacts were serious, with really dire consequences for the ships involved.
Not minor at all. These were serious, potentially catastrophic collisions. On March 5th, 1867, the Moravian, a ship from the Montreal Ocean Company, was traveling at a pretty good clip, 13 knots, when it struck an uncharted rock on its starboard quarter. The coordinates were logged: 27 degrees 30 out latitude, 72 degrees 15 route longitude. It was only, and this is crucial, the superior strength of the hull that miraculously saved the 237 passengers on board.
Wow, that close.
That close. Now, that incident, serious as it was, might have been dismissed as, a freak accident hitting an uncharted rock. But just 3 weeks later, April 13th, 1867, a very similar and equally violent event occurred.
Not again.
Yes, the Scotia this time, a ship from the prestigious Cunard Company, a really well-regarded transatlantic mail packet. It suffered a tremendous blow while also traveling fast, 13.3 knots, at 15 degrees 12 aero longitude and 45 degrees 37 aero latitude. This incident became absolutely critical because of what they found when they examined the damage.
What did the Scotia's damage actually reveal? Because the text hints it was something far more deliberate, almost artificial than just hitting a rock.
Exactly. When engineers finally got the Scotia into dry dock and could properly examine the hull, they were completely astonished. 2.5 yards below the waterline, there wasn't a jagged tear you'd expect from a rock.
No. What was there?
It was described as a regular rent in the form of an isosceles triangle. Perfectly geometric. The iron plates, which were 1 3/8 inches thick, pretty substantial, were broken, so perfectly defined that it could not have been more neatly done by a punch.
Like a machine did it.
That's exactly what it implied. This wasn't a natural impact. It indicated a precisely shaped instrument producing the perforation. And even more remarkably, whatever this instrument was, after being driven with prodigious strength through thick iron, it had somehow withdrawn itself.
Withdrawn itself.
Yes, cleanly. This was clear, irrefutable evidence of something artificial, powerful, and, frankly, deliberate. It pointed strongly towards intelligent design, not a random act of nature.
And with actual ship disappearances mounting, the text mentions over 200 lives lost, whether justly or unjustly, blamed on this thing. The public's demand became, well, pretty unequivocal, right? This wasn't just about scientific curiosity anymore. This was about safety, trade, everything.
Absolutely. The public was terrified by these repeated incidents, the mounting death toll. They demanded peremptorily that the sea should at any price be relieved from this formidable cetacean that was still, the prevailing theory, a dangerous whale-like creature.
Even after the Scotia incident.
The news might not have fully filtered through, or perhaps the idea of a machine was just too outlandish for most people initially. But the fear was real. The very idea of transatlantic communication, so vital for trade and global connection, was becoming more and more dangerous. The mystery had evolved from a scientific puzzle to a pressing matter of public safety, international commerce, and even national prestige. Governments simply couldn't ignore it any longer. This escalating global crisis, this palpable fear, brings us directly to the personal account of Professor Pierre Aronnax. He was the assistant professor in the Museum of Natural History in Paris.
Right.
And he found himself uniquely positioned, both because of his expertise and just by circumstance, to analyze this whole escalating phenomenon.
Professor Aronnax's perspective is absolutely crucial here, isn't it? Given his background as a renowned marine biologist, so what were his initial thoughts, his analyses and hypotheses about this puzzling and now clearly dangerous phenomenon?
Well, Professor Aronnax was certainly no stranger to the subject. He readily acknowledged his perfect familiarity with the subject, stating he'd followed up all the arguments in the scientific debate that had been raging for months.
So he's well-versed.
Deeply. He quickly dismissed one increasingly popular theory, that this was some kind of private submarine.
Why dismiss that? Seems plausible, maybe.
He argued it was highly unlikely. First, that a private individual, a gentleman, could build and operate such an enormous, complex machine in total secret. The logistics, the cost. It seemed impossible, and he also doubted a government could keep it secret either.
Why not a government? They have secrets.
True. But Aronnax noted that military technology was advancing incredibly rapidly at that time. He mentions, after the chesspots came the torpedoes. After the torpedoes, the submarine rams.
What are chesspots?
The chesspot was a new, advanced bolt-action rifle used notably in the Franco-Prussian War. His point was, weapons tech was moving fast. Torpedoes and submarine rams were cutting-edge naval weapons designed specifically to pierce ship hulls.
Ah, okay.
So his reasoning was, if a government possessed such a powerful submarine vessel capable of sinking ships like the Scotia, they'd surely announce it. Especially with public safety and international tensions at stake, they'd want to claim that power.
Makes sense. So if not a submarine, what was his main scientific conclusion?
His primary conclusion, the most scientifically plausible explanation he could muster, leaned towards a gigantic narwhal.
A narwhal, like the whale with the tusk.
Exactly, the unicorn of the sea. He knew the common narwhal could reach 60 feet long and had that formidable tusk, or tooth, really.
But this thing was way bigger than 60 feet.
Right. So his hypothesis was basically extrapolation. Increase its size 5-fold or 10-fold, he proposed. Give it strength proportionate to its size. Lengthen its destructive weapons.
Just scale everything up massively.
Precisely. To illustrate the kind of destructive power such an enlarged weapon could have, he pointed to an actual narwhal tusk in the Faculty of Medicine of Paris Museum. This tusk was already impressive. 2 yards and a quarter in length and 15 inches in diameter at the base.
That's huge.
It is. Then he said, imagine that same weapon, but 6 times stronger and 10 times more powerful, launched at a speed of 20 miles an hour. That kind of impact, he argued, could produce a shock capable of producing the catastrophe required, the exact kind of piercing damage seen on the Moravian, and especially the Scotia.
So a biological battering ram, essentially.
That was his theory. He firmly maintained it was a sea unicorn of colossal dimensions, armed not with a halberd, but with a real spur, as the armored frigates or the rams of war, whose massiveness and motive power it would possess at the same time. It was a brilliant biological solution proposed for what looked like a mechanical problem.
That's a really compelling argument, actually. Grounded in known biology, even if stretched to the absolute limit. But didn't he add a little caveat? A kind of cowardly thought, as he called it, that hinted at something maybe beyond his scientific explanation.
Yes, he did. Despite this robust scientific framework he'd built, his very closing thought in his analysis was, unless there be something over and above all that one has ever conjectured, seen, perceived, or experienced, which is just within the bounds of possibility.
Hedging his bets a bit.
You could say that. He himself admitted it was a cowardly statement for a scientist to make, a sort of concession to the truly inexplicable nature of it all. But it perfectly captured the elusiveness of the phenomenon. It acknowledged that even the most rigorous scientific minds sometimes face a reality that just defies all current understanding. That little hint of the truly unknown adds a fascinating layer to his otherwise quite logical deductions.
So with the world basically screaming for action, the U.S. government steps up. They send a powerful frigate, the Abraham Lincoln, captained by the determined Captain Farragut, to hunt this creature down.
That's right. A major expedition.
And they bring along a really formidable character who, initially at least, doubts Aronnax's grand theories about giant narwhals. Ned Land. Tell us about this guy, this prince of harpooners.
Ned Land is a fantastic character, truly larger than life. He's famously described, as you said, as the Prince of Harpooners. He's Canadian, from Quebec.
Yeah.
And what made him legendary wasn't just strength. It was his uncommon quickness of hand, combined with an unmatched blend of skill, coolness, audacity, and cunning in the incredibly dangerous business of whale hunting.
So the best of the best.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
His family, originally from Quebec, were already known as a tribe of hardy fishermen, but Ned had taken the craft to a whole new level. Now, despite Professor Aronnax laying out all his detailed scientific arguments, his complex hypotheses about gigantic narwhals, Ned Land was initially deeply skeptical.
Why? He hunted big sea creatures.
He was a man of very practical experience. What he saw, what he felt, what he knew from years at sea, this phenomenon, this thing, seemed to defy all of that practical knowledge. It just didn't add up for him based on his reality.
And Aronnax, being the academic, tried to sway him with science, right? Specifically with his detailed explanation of hydrostatic pressure, something most of us, frankly, can barely get our heads around. How did Ned Land, the pragmatic harpooner, react to that kind of abstract scientific concept?
Right, Aronnax goes into full professor mode. He lays out the formidable science of deep sea pressure, explains how at 32 feet down, the pressure is 1 atmosphere. At 3,200 feet, it's 100 atmospheres. And then at a staggering 32,000 feet over 6 miles deep, it reaches 1,000 atmospheres.
1,000 times normal air pressure.
Exactly. And he vividly paints a picture of what that means. At those depths, a human body would bear a crushing pressure of 97,500,000 pounds. Enough, he says, to flatten you, as if you had been drawn from the plates of a hydraulic machine.
Yikes. Okay, so how did Ned take that?
Well, to Ned's credit, he was visibly shaken by these figures. He was clearly impressed by the sheer scale of the forces Aronnax was describing. However, as Aronnax himself noted, Ned was not yet willing to give in.
Still skeptical.
Still skeptical, he sort of conceded that if such animals did exist way down at the bottom of the seas, they would necessarily be as strong as you say. But he still questioned the fundamental premise. Do they actually exist? His skepticism was really deeply ingrained in his practical experience.
But Ned Land wasn't just talk, was he? His school wasn't just reputation. He proved it pretty early on during the voyage, didn't he? Kind of silencing any doubts about his legendary abilities.
Oh, absolutely. During the initial part of the voyage of the Abraham Lincoln, which was quite long and tedious, they ran into some American whalers. Captain Farragut gave Ned Land permission to go aboard the Monroe and lend them a hand.
Show them how it's done.
Pretty much. Ned's skill was immediately obvious in this masterful display of harpooning. He managed to harpoon 2 whales with a double blow, hitting one fatally right in the heart, and then catching the other after this short, furious chase.
Wow.
It was such an impressive feat that it led Professor Aronnax to confidently state that if the monster ever had to do with Ned Land's harpoon, I would not bet in its favor. It was a real testament to his raw talent, his courage. It established him firmly as the ultimate weapon they had against whatever it was lurking in the depths. So, with Ned Land on board, the ultimate harpooner, Captain Farragut determined at the helm, and this immense public pressure mounting, the hunt began in earnest. It really transformed into this international spectacle, fueled by a mix of fear, intense scientific curiosity, and a kind of global responsibility to solve this thing.
The Abraham Lincoln, this powerful frigate armed for war, sets out on this almost quixotic quest. Where did they even begin to look? The ocean's a big place.
It is indeed. The Abraham Lincoln embarked on this relentless crossing of the Pacific. They meticulously avoided continents and islands, areas where the beast seemed to shun going. The crew joked it was because there was not enough water for him there.
Ah, probably not far off given the size estimates.
Right. The crew maintained this incredible vigil, hour after hour, day after day. They were driven partly by the mission's importance, but also by Captain Farragut's pretty generous wager. A substantial $2,000 for the first person to spot the monster.
$2,000 in 1866, that's a fortune.
A huge incentive. But days turned into weeks, then months, dragged by with absolutely no success. The sheer vastness of the ocean just seemed to swallow their quarry whole. By November 2nd, Captain Farragut's famous patience was wearing incredibly thin.
Understandable.
He issued this dramatic ultimatum. If the monster did not appear within 3 days, the frigate would abandon the hunt, turn around, and head back towards European seas. Basically, admit defeat.
The pressure must have been immense in those last 3 days, knowing time was running out. Did they try anything desperate, anything unconventional to lure it out of hiding?
Oh, they did. In those final 2 days, the text says they tried 1,000 schemes, absolutely desperate to avoid the shame and failure of returning empty-handed. They trailed large quantities of bacon in the ship's wake.
Bacon? Seriously?
Seriously, hoping to maybe attract the creature with bait. Which, as Aronnax dryly notes, mostly just delighted the opportunistic sharks that were following them. Small boats were sent out, radiating from the Abraham Lincoln like spokes on a wheel, trying to leave no patch of sea unexplored.
But still nothing.
Still nothing. The night of November 4th arrived, dark, silent. The submarine mystery remained stubbornly hidden. The crew was exhausted, completely disheartened. They were starting to lose all hope.
But then,
Yeah.
just when it seemed utterly lost, a cry cuts through the darkness. It finally appeared. Tell us about that moment, that electrifying sighting. How did it just transform the whole atmosphere on board?
Right. It's towards midnight on November 4th. This eerie silence had fallen over the frigate, just heavy with disappointment. Then a lookout's piercing cry, "Look!" just shatters the stillness. Suddenly, Aronnax describes, the sea seemed to be illuminated all over.
Illuminated? How?
Not like normal phosphorescence. Aronnax, the scientist, immediately recognized it as being of an essentially electrical nature, this vibrant, living light emanating from the depths, and then undeniable movement, swift and purposeful. It is moving forwards, backwards. It is darting towards us.
Wow.
A general cry, this mix of fear and absolute triumph, just rises from the entire frigate. Captain Farragut, showing incredible presence of mind, immediately gives orders to reverse engines, turn the Abraham Lincoln away from this rapidly approaching phenomenon. The hunt, which had been so long and tedious, was now well and truly on.
And the chase itself is just incredible. The Abraham Lincoln, the state-of-the-art frigate, is completely outmatched by whatever this thing is. It sounds almost like a predator toying with its prey.
That's a good way to put it. The frigate tries to sheer off, get away, but the animal approached with this astonishing speed, double her own. While the Abraham Lincoln was making a very respectable 14 knots.
Pretty fast for a ship that size.
Very fast. But the creature just effortlessly enveloped it with its electric rings like luminous dust, completely dazzling and disorienting the crew. Then it would move away, leaving this brilliant phosphorescent track in its wake, only to reappear moments later, playing with them.
So Farragut realized pretty quickly what they were up against.
He did. Witnessing this impossible agility, this electric display, he quickly deduced it is evidently a gigantic narwhal, and an electric one. An electric narwhal. He even mused that perhaps it could only be approached with a gymnotus or a torpedo.
A gymnotus, like an electric eagle.
Exactly. He was recognizing its dreadful power, this chilling acknowledgement of its formidable, almost weaponized electrical defenses.
So the Abraham Lincoln, even pushing its engines to the absolute red line, just couldn't keep up. That must have been incredibly disheartening, almost humiliating for the crew.
Completely. The frigate reached an impressive 18.5 miles an hour, then they pushed it even harder, hitting 19.3 miles an hour. The engines were straining to their absolute limits, smoke pouring from the funnels, the masts literally trembling from the vibration and strain.
But the monster?
The monster, apparently without straining itself, just maintained its effortless lead. It pulled away at what Aronnax estimated was not less than 30 miles an hour.
30 miles an hour? In the water?
Unheard of! Ned Land, standing ready with his harpoon, was absolutely furious. His frustration just boiling over as he watched them game slightly, only for this elusive creature to steal away again, disappearing into his own phosphorescent trail. It was crystal clear that sheer speed and conventional naval power were just not going to be enough.
So the captain, Farragut, understandably losing patience with this relentless, futile chase, decides to switch tactics. Time for a more direct, aggressive approach.
Right. At noon, after hours of this fruitless pursuit, Captain Farragut gives the order. Load the forecastle gun, the big one, with conical bullets, the most powerful ammunition they had. He cries out, $5 to whoever will hit that infernal beast, trying to galvanize his gun crew.
Did they hit it?
An old gunner, known for his steady eye, took careful aim and managed a direct hit. But, to everyone's absolute dismay, the bullet just seemed to glance off. It was seen sliding off the rounded surface, was lost in 2 miles depth of sea.
Bounced right off.
Like hitting solid armor, it was starkly clear this was no ordinary animal with vulnerable flesh. Farragut, leaning towards Aronnax, declared with this grim determination, "I will pursue that beast till my frigate bursts up."
Wow, he was committed. And then, the combat truly began. The frigate, despite its resolve, despite its firepower, gets struck. And Professor Aronnax's world is literally turned upside down.
Yes. It happened during this relentless, desperate pursuit. The Abraham Lincoln was bearing down once more, trying to close the distance, when suddenly the frigate was violently struck. The impact was immense.
From the creature.
Presumably. It threw Aronnax himself clean off the deck into the churning water. He lost consciousness briefly. When he resurfaced, sputtering and disoriented, the frigate's distant beacon lights were already vanishing over the horizon. He was alone, lost in the vast, dark ocean, facing a pretty immediate and terrifying fate.
But incredibly, in a moment of extraordinary luck and Ned Land's skill, he wasn't alone for long. And this rescue led to a crucial, absolutely paradigm-shifting revelation.
It's truly remarkable. By sheer, improbable chance, Ned Land had also been thrown from the frigate by the same impact. He managed to find Aronnax amidst the waves and, with incredible strength, rescued him along with Conseil, Aronnax's ever-loyal servant.
So the three of them are together in the water.
Clinging desperately to the very object that had caused the collision, this dark, hard, metallic-feeling form bobbing there in the water. It was right then, as Ned instinctively tried to use his harpoon against this thing they still thought was a monster. The harpoon point just blunted on impact. It hit something incredibly hard. And that's when Ned made his crucial, game-changing revelation. He exclaimed with this mix of awe, maybe frustration, "Because, Professor, that beast is made of sheet iron."
Sheet iron. That must have been a seismic shock for Aronnax, instantly rewriting everything he thought he knew, from biological wonder to technological marvel in a heartbeat.
Utterly transformative, Aronnax immediately confirmed it himself. He kicked the object they were clinging to. He noted it was evidently a hard, impenetrable body, definitely not the soft, yielding flesh of any marine mammal. The blow produced this distinct, metallic sound, and it seemed, as he touched it, as if it was made of riveted plates.
Just like Ned said.
Just like Ned said. Confirming the harpooner's astonishing insight, Aronnax concluded there was no doubt about it. This colossal monster, this baffling natural phenomenon that had plagued shipping lanes and puzzled the entire learned world for months, was nothing else than a submarine vessel. The age of the unknown creature was suddenly over. The age of the astonishing man-made machine had just begun, and the three of them were now irrevocably physically attached to it.
Imagine that shock. Realizing you're clinging not to a beast, but a machine, an impossible machine. Aronnax, Ned, and Conseil then find themselves imprisoned within its enigmatic silent walls, thrust into this world they literally could not have conceived of minutes before.
Exactly. Their initial prison, as Aronnax calls it, was this dark, completely enclosed space, maybe 20 feet by 10, he estimated. Impenetrable iron walls, but hidden under this thick, rough formium matting. No visible windows, no doors, just complete suffocating blackout. Utterly. Then, just abruptly, dense darkness suddenly gave way to extreme light. Blindingly bright, revealing their surroundings, opulent, yes, but still starkly a cell. It was this immediate, jarring immersion into a world of technological marvel mixed with bewildering mystery.
And then comes the first encounter with the man himself, Captain Nemo, the enigmatic commander of this vessel, the mind behind the machine. What was he actually like in those first tense moments?
Aronnax gives this incredibly detailed and insightful description of Nemo. He immediately perceives these prevailing qualities that just radiated from him. Self-confidence, Aronnax notes, seen in his serene demeanor and those piercing black eyes. There was a calmness in his pale skin, an energy evident in the way his brows could rapidly contract, and an undeniable courage reflected in his deep, controlled breathing.
That was imposing.
Very. He was tall, had a large, noble forehead, a perfectly straight nose, a clearly cut mouth, and these fine, tapered hands, which Aronnax thought indicated a highly nervous temperament hiding beneath that composed exterior. But a really striking feature was his eyes.
His eyes.
Described as rather far from each other, they apparently could take in nearly a quarter of the horizon at once. Giving him this range of vision, Aronnax felt was far superior to Ned Land's. It was as if, Aronnax mused, Nemo could read the very depths of the seas. Not just physically see, but maybe understand them on a deeper level, almost read their souls, perhaps.
So, physically imposing, intensely perceptive, radiating this almost superhuman aura.
Yeah.
How did the initial attempt at communication go, given the obvious language barrier and the huge power dynamic?
Well, Aronnax, desperate for answers, tried speaking to him, first in French, then German, even Latin. But Nemo just appeared to understand nothing, maintaining this profound, really unsettling silence.
Plain dumb. Or did he really not understand?
It seems he was choosing silence initially, because it was only later that Nemo revealed his profound multilingualism. He suddenly addressed Aronnax directly, precisely by name, revealing he knew exactly who they were. And Pierre Aronnax, professor of natural history at the Museum of Paris, entrusted with a scientific mission abroad, Conseil, his servant, and Ned Land, harpooner.
Whoa, he knew everything about them. How?
Exactly. It demonstrated this unnerving level of prior knowledge about their identities, their mission, their backgrounds. It just heightened the mystery and hammered home the sense that they were truly, completely at Nemo's mercy.
And then came Nemo's chilling philosophy, his declaration of independence. He didn't mince words about their situation, did he? Or his complete disdain for the surface world. It sounds like a profound statement of self-sovereignty.
Oh, he didn't mince words at all. Nemo's statement was almost brutal. He declared, "I am not what you call a civilized man. I have done with society entirely for reasons which I alone have the right of appreciating."
Done with society entirely.
Entirely. "I do not, therefore, obey its laws," he continued, "and I desire you never to allude to them before me again." This wasn't just personal rebellion. It was this deep philosophical rejection of terrestrial laws and norms. He asserted his right to treat you as enemies, even chillingly stating he could sink beneath the waters and forget that you had ever existed.
So what was the choice he offered them?
Stark. Existential, really. Life aboard his vessel, the Nautilus, but with the absolute condition of silence. They could never speak of what they saw or experienced if they ever somehow returned. The alternative. Immediate death.
How did it react to that?
Ned Land was furious, vehemently opposed, ready to fight. But Aronnax, driven by this insatiable scientific curiosity, the chance to see things no human had ever seen, and maybe clinging to a desperate hope of future escape, he reluctantly accepted. From that moment on, Aronnax knew him only by his chosen mysterious name. "I am nothing to you but Captain Nemo." And this vessel, the Nautilus, it really wasn't just a submarine in the way we might think of one now. It was a self-sustaining mobile world, a marvel of engineering far, far beyond its time. The technology that allowed Captain Nemo to live entirely free, completely independent beneath the waves, it was revolutionary, hinting at scientific principles barely even dreamt of on the surface back then.
Okay, let's talk specifics about the Nautilus itself. What were its astounding dimensions, and how on Earth was it powered in a way that defied all contemporary understanding? No steam engines underwater, surely.
No, absolutely not. The Nautilus was an awe-inspiring piece of engineering. While later parts of the text give its precise length as 232 feet, the sources immediately impress upon us its sheer scale. Just its screw, the propeller, was a staggering 19 feet in diameter.
19 feet. Just the propeller.
That's the propeller. It was designed to be incredibly massive, especially compared to those 300-foot ships it had previously encountered, and so effortlessly outmaneuvered. Its total area measures 6,032 feet, and its contents about 1,500 cubic yards, which means when fully submerged, it displaced 50,000 feet of water or weighs 1,500 tons. This was a vessel built for unparalleled power and deep-sea resilience.
And the propulsion. Nemo reveals his secret wasn't any conventional engine. He talks about something far more advanced, more elegant.
Way more advanced. Electricity, Nemo explained, almost with a gleam in his eye, was the soul of my mechanical apparatus, and the source of this seemingly infinite power was just as revolutionary.
Where did he get the electricity from? Batteries?
No, far cleverer. He derived it, he claimed, from sodium that I extract from seawater. specifically noting that common salt, chloride of sodium, makes up about 2 and 23% of seawater. This harnessed electricity provided everything: heat, light, motion, and life to the Nautilus.
So he was generating power directly from the ocean itself.
Essentially, yes. And its powerful screw, driven by this clean, silent, seemingly inexhaustible energy source, performed an astounding 120 revolutions in a second.
120 revolutions per second.
Per second, enabling the vessel to achieve that astonishing speed of 50 miles an hour, a speed utterly unimaginable for any surface ship in the 1860s, let alone a submarine.
Okay, 50 miles an hour underwater? That's incredible. How did it manage to dive and surface with such precision? And what about the pressure? The crushing pressures of the deep. The physics alone would have been mind-boggling for 19th century engineers.
The Nautilus was designed for unparalleled control in 3 dimensions. For normal travel, 9/10 of its immense bulk was kept submerged, making it this sleek, low-profile vessel, hard to spot. To fully immerse itself, it had these internal reservoirs capable of holding 150 tons of seawater.
Alice tanks, basically.
Exactly. And for achieving considerable depth and maintaining stability down there, it had supplementary reservoirs holding another 100 tons. Now, the pumps, which Aronnax noted had enormous power, remembering how their jets of water burst like a torrent upon the Abraham Lincoln. These pumps were capable of overcoming the titanic hydrostatic pressures found deep down, pressures of 100 atmospheres at 1,000 feet deep. That's an incredible feat of structural integrity and mechanical might for that era.
And its steering was equally innovative, wasn't it? It allowed for not just horizontal travel like a ship, but also vertical movement, making it truly a 3-dimensional vessel in a way surface ships couldn't even dream of.
Absolutely. For horizontal movement, turning left or right, it used an ordinary rudder, much like a conventional ship, so navigation was familiar in that sense. But for vertical movement, diving and surfacing, or even diagonal sinking and rising, that was its most revolutionary aspect. It employed 2 inclined planes fastened to its sides, like underwater wings or hydroplanes.
Controlled from inside.
Yes, controlled by powerful levers within the vessel. This allowed it to glide smoothly up or down through the water column. And if Nemo needed to surface quickly, straight up, he could ship the screw, basically disengage it, and the vessel's natural buoyancy, combined with the water pressure difference, would cause the Nautilus to ascend vertically like a balloon filled with hydrogen. It was a masterpiece of hydrodynamic control.
What about seeing in the dark? And the really critical issue of air. How do they breathe for long periods underwater? These are huge logistical challenges, even for modern submarines.
For lighting up the surrounding ocean, the Nautilus used a powerful electric reflector. This incredible device was capable of illuminating the water for half a mile ahead of the vessel, cutting through the abyssal darkness with its brilliant beam. This, in fact, was the very source of that mysterious phosphorescence in the supposed narwhal that had baffled all those surface ships and led them on that wild goose chase.
So the light explained the glow. What about air?
Right, air. Electricity couldn't create air, obviously, but it powered powerful pumps stored within the vessel, which circulated and presumably purified the internal atmosphere. Nemo also explained that he routinely surfaced like a cetacean, like a whale breaching, to naturally renew the air supply for the crew. A simple, elegant, natural process supplementing the mechanical systems.
And the sheer cost and ingenuity involved in actually building this thing. It's mind-boggling, especially considering the secrecy. It wasn't built in one place, was it? Like a single shipyard.
Oh no, that would have been impossible to keep secret. It was a covert, multinational undertaking. A real testament to Nemo's meticulous planning and, frankly, his vast resources. The construction involved components sourced from various top European and American manufacturers.
Like who?
Well, Penn & Co. in London for general construction elements, Laird's of Liverpool, famous for their ironclad warships, provided the crucial iron hull plates. Scott's at Glasgow crafted the massive screw. The reservoirs came from Kail & Co. in Paris, the powerful engine from Krupp in Prussia, its formidable ram-like beak from Motala in Sweden, and the precision navigational instruments from Hart Brothers in New York.
Wow, an international effort. How did he keep it secret?
All these parts were ordered under different names, different shell companies, presumably, to maintain absolute secrecy. Then they were painstakingly assembled by Nemo and his trusted, loyal crew on a remote, unnamed desert island. Once the Nautilus was complete and launched, all traces of their construction site, the workshops, everything were utterly destroyed by fire, wiped off the map.
Incredible. What about the cost? Any estimate?
Aronnax estimates the total cost of the vessel itself, plus all the art, the library, the collections inside, at approximately £200,000.
£200,000 in the 1860s.
Exactly. To put that in perspective for a 19th century audience, that was an astronomical sum, equivalent to building several major naval frigates or maybe the entire annual budget of a small nation. It just showcased Nemo's immense, unaccountable wealth and his singular, obsessive focus.
Beyond the sheer engineering genius of the Nautilus, Nemo had essentially created an entire existence completely divorced from the surface world. It wasn't just a vessel, it was his sanctuary, his home, a kind of self-sustaining microcosm beneath the waves.
It truly was. Captain Nemo had engineered a life sustained entirely by the ocean, deliberately rejecting all ties to the land. Take their cuisine, for example. It was made, as Nemo proudly states, from the sea alone, showcasing extraordinary culinary ingenuity.
What kind of things did they eat? Fish, obviously, but...
Much more than just fish. Aronnax describes meals featuring succulent fillet of turtle, rich dolphin livers, a delightful-sounding preserve of Helvetia, which are essentially sea cucumbers, and even a creamy, sweet dish made from cetacea milk, whale milk, presumably sweetened with fuchsia sugar, a sugar derived from seaweed. Nemo proudly stated his cook was a clever fellow who excelled at preparing these various, often quite exotic, marine products. It was a diet completely alien to the surface world, yet apparently Aronnax found it quite palatable.
And the Nautilus wasn't just functional, was it? It was also a place of immense culture and luxury, reflecting the obviously sophisticated mind of its creator. Tell us about the library and that astonishing museum or drawing room Aronnax describes.
The library was astounding. It contained 12,000 volumes, which Nemo referred to almost reverently as the only ties which bind me to the earth. It was filled with works on science, morals, and literature in every language, a veritable treasure trove of human knowledge accumulated underwater.
Anything missing?
Interestingly, yes. Aronnax noted quite pointedly, not one single work on political economy. That subject appeared to be strictly proscribed, which strongly suggests Nemo's deliberate rejection of surface world governance, economics, the whole system. The books were even arranged irregularly on the shelves, hinting that Nemo read widely, driven purely by intellectual curiosity rather than any strict classification or order.
And the drawing room, it sounded more like a museum.
It really was. Adjoining the library was this immense drawing room, splendidly lighted, which served as Nemo's personal museum, absolutely packed with treasures of nature and art. It boasted 30 first-rate pictures, masterpieces by renowned artists, each estimated at £1,000 or more. And alongside the art, a vast, exquisite collection of rare shells, including fragile white bivalve shells and the magnificent spur of New Zealand, unique specimens collected from the deepest, most untouched corners of the globe.
But the most astonishing part of this museum, for me anyway, reading the description, was the pearl collection. It spoke not just of immense wealth, but of an almost mythical, impossible accumulation.
Indeed. Within the drawing room, separate compartments held these chaplets of pearls of the greatest beauty, reflecting the electric light and dazzling sparks of fire. And these were not ordinary pearls. No. They included rare pink pearls from the Red Sea, vibrant green pearls, even yellow, blue, and incredibly rare black pearls, a whole rainbow of oceanic jewels. Aronnax noted several specimens of inestimable value gathered from the rarest oyster beds. Some pearls were described as being larger than a pigeon's egg. One single piece was estimated by Nemo to be worth over £500,000 a sum, surpassing even the legendary pearl owned by the Imam of Muscat, which was famous at the time. It just showcased Nemo's boundless resources and his unique, privileged access to the ocean's hidden riches, completely untainted by surface commerce or politics.
And all this, the self-sufficiency, the technology, the luxury, this defiant existence, it was all rooted in Nemo's profound philosophy of the sea, wasn't it? His declaration of absolute, unwavering freedom down there.
It was his core belief, his driving principle. Nemo famously proclaimed it with this passionate conviction. I love it. The sea is everything. It covers 7/10 of the terrestrial globe. Its breath is pure and healthy. It is an immense desert where man is never lonely, for he feels life stirring on all sides.
Poetic almost.
Very. He described the sea as the living infinite and a place of supreme tranquility. Then he stated vehemently, the sea does not belong to despots.
Doesn't belong to despots.
His words. Upon its surface, he argued, men can still exercise unjust laws, fight, tear one another to pieces, and be carried away with terrestrial horrors. But at 30 feet below its level, their reign ceases, their influence is quenched, and their power disappears.
So, escape velocity.
Complete escape. Ah, sir, he urged Aronnax. Live in the bosom of the waters. There only is independence. There I recognize no masters. There I am free. That was the driving force behind his incredible creation, the Nautilus, his chosen life of exile, and his absolute rejection of surface society's conventions, conflicts, and corruption. His living infinite was his personal utopia, utterly separate from the flaws he saw dominating the land.
From this moment on, we, along with the narrator, Professor Aronnax, become these privileged, perhaps unwilling witnesses to a series of absolutely unparalleled explorations and astonishing events. Things no human had ever experienced before. The first of these being a literal walk on the bottom of the sea near Crespo Island.
This was, and it's no exaggeration, a completely groundbreaking experience for a human being in the 1860s. Captain Nemo introduced Aronnax and his companions, Ned and Conseil, to the Ruque roll apparatus.
What was that?
It was a revolutionary diving system, essentially an early form of scuba gear. It supplied compressed air, held under 50 atmospheres of pressure in a tank, providing an astonishing 9 or 10 hours of breathable air underwater.
9 or 10 hours, that's incredible.
Unheard of duration. This ingenious device was fixed securely to their backs by means of braces, like a soldier's knapsack, granting them unprecedented freedom and mobility underwater, and for illumination in the deep, darker patches.
They needed light, right?
Absolutely. They used the Ruhmkorff apparatus. This was an electric lantern that produced a white and continuous light using luminous carbonic gas, effectively cutting through the underwater gloom. They even carried special air guns for hunting. They were fully equipped for exploring this utterly alien environment.
And the visual spectacle of that first walk.
Yeah.
It must have been absolutely breathtaking. A truly alien landscape just unfolding before their very eyes.
Aronnax's description is just filled with wonder. He exclaimed that at the depth of 30 feet, I could see as if I was in broad daylight. They walked on fine, even sand, which brilliantly reflected the sunlight filtering down from the surface. The underwater landscape itself was adorned with magnificent rocks, hung with a tapestry of zoophytes of the most beautiful kind.
Zoophytes, like corals and anemones.
Exactly. Living organisms creating what he described as a brilliant garden of flowers, blooming with vibrant life. They observed a light network of marine plants and these incredibly long ribbons of fucus types of seaweed stretching for amazing distances. He even noted the zonation of plant life by color.
How so?
Green plants thrived near the sunny surface. Red ones flourished a bit deeper down where only red light penetrated well. And then black or brown hydrophytes formed these strange, almost alien gardens in the deepest beds they visited, each color spectrum perfectly adapted to the diminishing light levels.
What about the sounds? Or maybe the lack of sound? And the marine life they actually encountered during this extraordinary first walk?
Aronnax specifically noted the profound silence of this underwater world. He emphasized that water is a better conductor of sound than air in the ratio of 4:1. Yet paradoxically, in that immense quiet, even the slightest sounds, like their own footfalls on the sandy seabed, became intensely audible, creating this very unique, muffled soundscape.
Did they hunt anything with those air guns?
They did. Their hunt, conducted with the near-silent air guns, included bagging a swift sea otter, and rather surprisingly, one of Captain Nemo's companions managed to shoot an albatross from beneath the surface as it soared overhead.
Shot a bird from underwater. Wow.
Quite a feat. They also observed these vibrant shoals of physallids, like Portuguese men-o'-war delicate drifting medusae or jellyfish, and these fiery pelagiae, other types of jellyfish that provided brilliant phosphorescent light in the deeper, darker areas they explored, turning the ocean into a kind of living light show around them. It was just a complete sensory immersion in a new, wondrous, and eerily silent world. And the journey continued, constantly pushing the boundaries of exploration. It revealed both the breathtaking beauty and, at times, the harsh, untamed realities of the marine world, including that stunning phenomenon you mentioned, the pervasive living light that permeates the ocean's true depth.
The Nautilus really wasn't afraid of going deep, was it? It plunged into abyssal zones that were previously completely unreachable, completely unknown to humankind.
Not afraid at all. The Nautilus dared to dive to absolutely extraordinary, crushing depths. Aronnax records reaching 16,000 yards, that's 4 marine leagues, nearly 14 miles down. A feat of engineering that just beggars belief for the 1860s.
14 miles deep, what was that like?
Terrifying, according to Aronnax. At these immense pressures, he noted that even the robust steel plates of the vessel's hull actually trembled, and the thick glass of the saloon windows seemed to visibly curve inward under the terrifying, relentless force of the water outside. It was a stark, constant reminder of the incredibly fragile boundary separating them from instant crushing annihilation.
And those luminous displays you mentioned earlier, the living light, what exactly was the source of that incredible, pervasive oceanic glow they saw down there?
That was truly a marvel of biological luminescence on a massive scale. Aronnax described seeing an infinite agglomeration of colored infusoria, these are microscopic organisms, and countless globules of jelly, delicate coelenterates or jellyfish relatives. He mentions an estimate of as many as 25,000 of these tiny light-producing creatures have been counted in less than 2 cubic half-inches of water.
25,000 in that tiny volume. That's incredible density.
Incredible. And this amazing density of bioluminescent life created this pervasive, almost ethereal living light that permeated the ocean all around them, turning the pitch-black abyssal darkness into this shimmering, shifting canvas of underwater light and color.
What else did they see down there in that illuminated darkness?
Within this living light, they observed what Aronnax called marine monsters disporting themselves like salamanders. Bizarre, wondrous, often unidentified creatures, perfectly adapted to this unique, high-pressure, light-filled environment. The variety of fish alone was astounding. He describes Austrasian's box fish, some heavily armored, others apparently so docile they could be tamed like birds. There were trigons, which apparently grunted eerily like sea pigs, strange dromedaries, electrical fish capable of stunning their prey, diodons, also known as sea porcupines, that could inflate themselves into bristling, spiny cushions when threatened, pegasi, or sea moths, that could seemingly shoot into the air briefly from the water's surface, and even catodons, butterfly fish, which Aronnax called the flycatchers of the seas, describing an almost unbelievable hunting technique where they used jets of water squirted from their mouths to knock insects out of the air above the surface.
Wow. But it wasn't all wondrous fish, right? There were dangers too. Sharks.
Oh, definitely dangers. Menacing Isabella sharks and terrifying Tiber sharks that would apparently deliberately ram the thick glass windows of the saloon, much to Ned Land's constant, furious desire to get out there and harpoon them.
But Ned Land, our impatient Canadian harpooner, he did eventually get his chance for some real action, didn't he? At the perilous pearl fisheries of Ceylon, near the Mannar Bank. A chance to prove his skills against the ocean's true predators, not just admire strange fish.
He certainly did. Captain Nemo, ever the enigmatic host, deliberately took them to the Mannar Bank, a place famous for its incredibly rich pearl beds, home to the pearl oyster, the Melagrinna margarifera. Aronnax, the scientist, took the opportunity to explain the fascinating mechanics of how pearls actually form, noting they're essentially a morbid secretion built up in layers around a hard kernel, like a grain of sand or a parasite, turning a tiny imperfection into a potential treasure over years.
Did they find any treasures?
While they were there exploring the oyster beds, they encountered a truly colossal tridacny, a giant clam, basically. Aronnax estimated its weight at a staggering 600 pounds. Its bread, the adductor muscle inside, was more than 2.5 yards across.
600 pounds. That's enormous. Was there a pearl inside?
There was. Within its immense shell, Captain Nemo showed them a single, truly inestimable pearl. Aronnax guessed its value at 500,000 pounds at least. A king's ransom in one pearl. But despite its immense value, Nemo just pointed it out and left it untouched, saying he was allowing it to continue growing, a gesture that spoke volumes about his detachment from conventional wealth and his unique relationship with the ocean's riches.
And then came that truly harrowing shark attack, involving a local Indian pearl diver. This moment really showcased Captain Nemo's unexpected, almost contradictory nature, a sudden flash of profound compassion, or maybe something else.
It was a moment of profound revelation, absolutely cutting through Nemo's usual cool, detached stoicism. An enormous shark, a true apex predator of those waters, viciously attacked an Indian fisherman who was diving for pearls. The shark struck him with its powerful tail, stunning him, and was preparing to literally tear him in two.
Horrifying.
In a display Aronnax describes as unparalleled courage, Captain Nemo, without a moment's hesitation, lunged directly at the massive shark armed only with a dagger. He fought it hand to fin, right there in the water.
Nemo fought a shark with a dagger.
He did. It was ultimately Ned Land's decisive harpoon strike, thrown with perfect timing and accuracy, that finally saved Nemo by driving the wounded shark away. But it was Nemo's statement immediately afterwards that was truly telling, illuminating a much deeper motivation for his self-imposed exile.
What did he say?
He looked at the rescued, grateful Indian diver and said to Aronnax, "That Indian, sir, is an inhabitant of an oppressed country, and I am still and shall be to my last breath one of them."
Wow, that's powerful. It hints at a personal history, doesn't it? Something rooted in political oppression driving his hatred of the surface world.
Exactly, a driving force behind his chosen life of solitude, rebellion, and, as we later see, vengeance.
Nemo's scientific pursuits clearly extended far beyond just observing marine life. He even discovered and navigated a secret underwater passage between two major seas, the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. That's a testament to his groundbreaking exploratory spirit.
Yes, a truly remarkable feat of geographical deduction and submarine navigation through what Nemo himself called the Arabian Tunnel. His scientific detective work started simply by observing identical fish species living in both the Red Sea and the Mediterranean, which shouldn't have been possible if they were completely separate.
So he suspected a connection.
He hypothesized a connection, and to prove it, he undertook this clever experiment. He caught and tagged fish near Suez in the Red Sea with small copper rings. Then later, astonishingly, his crew caught some of those very same fish, still bearing the rings, way over on the coast of Syria in the Mediterranean.
That's ingenious. Proof positive.
Proof positive of an underwater passage, a natural canal linking the two seas. The Nautilus, of course, then navigated this Arabian tunnel with ease, demonstrating both Nemo's scientific rigor and the vessel's incredible capabilities to go where no ship could.
And what about Ned Land's big challenge with the dugong? That sounds like a more personal battle, a chance for the harpooner to really showcase his prowess against a truly formidable sea creature.
It was. During their travels through these new waters, likely after exiting the tunnel, Ned Land encountered a particularly large and powerful dugong, which is a big herbivorous marine mammal, sometimes called a sea cow. Captain Nemo basically challenged Ned to hunt it, perhaps partly for sport, partly for fresh provisions.
How did Ned do?
He displayed his legendary harpooning prowess, but this particular dugong was incredibly strong and tenacious. At one point during the struggle, the creature actually lifted their small boat partially out of the water, as a lion does a roebuck, demonstrating its immense power. But Ned's persistence, his skill, his sheer grit eventually paid off, and he successfully killed the animal. It provided fresh meat for the crew, which Aronnax notes was a welcome change from their otherwise strictly marine-based diet. A small taste of the land, perhaps, for the frustrated Canadian.
And then the treasures of Vigo Bay. This wasn't just about scientific discovery or hunting, was it? This revealed Captain Nemo's hidden, almost charitable purpose, linking directly back to that earlier declaration of solidarity with the oppressed.
Precisely. Vigo Bay off the coast of Spain was infamous as the site of a major naval battle in 1702, during which numerous Spanish galleons, heavily laden with gold and silver from America, were sunk.
Sunken treasure, the classic story.
Exactly. Nemo revealed to Aronnax that he regularly visited this site, calmly picking up what man has lost, as he put it. He was systematically salvaging the vast riches submerged there, gold and silver bullion, coins which he estimated to be worth an absolutely staggering 500 millions in total value.
500 million. What was he doing with all that gold? Funding his operation? Building more Nautiluses?
That's what Aronnax likely assumed at first. But Nemo explained its true purpose. The salvaged gold wasn't for his personal gain, not for funding the Nautilus or living in luxury, though he did that too. It was specifically designated, he said, for oppressed races as well as individuals.
Helping rebellions. Funding the downtrodden.
That's the strong implication. It directly connects back to his passionate statement after saving the Indian pearl diver. His immense secret wealth, harvested from the mistakes and conflicts of the surface world, was being used as a form of private philanthropy, or perhaps revolutionary funding, fueling struggles against the very oppression and tyranny that seemed to have driven him into exile. It demonstrated this complex, maybe contradictory moral code, a deep sense of injustice, fueling both his isolation and his targeted interventions in surface affairs.
This journey isn't just about external discovery, exploring the physical world beneath the waves. It's also slowly, tantalizingly, peeling back the layers of the captain himself, revealing his past, his profound motivations, his ultimate goals. And then comes perhaps the most astonishing discovery of all, the actual literal vanished continent of Atlantis.
Yes, Captain Nemo, acting as this guide to lost worlds, personally steered the Nautilus to the very site of what he claimed was the vanished continent. Aronnax describes this eerie underwater landscape. Submerged dead forests, the trees starkly petrified, without leaves or sap, their long, thin shapes standing upright like spectral arrows pointing from the seabed.
Creepy.
Very. And amidst these eerie fossilized remnants, they saw picturesque ruins, what looked like the remains of castles and temples, now completely encrusted with zoophytes, draped in seaweed and fucus, a testament to a civilization long drowned beneath the waves.
And Nemo confirms this is Atlantis, the mythical lost continent.
He does. He identifies it as Atlantis, the legendary land beyond the columns of Hercules, once inhabited by the ancient Atlantics. But what was truly remarkable, and frankly terrifying, was that the site wasn't entirely dead. A submarine volcano was still active nearby.
An underwater volcano near Atlantis.
Yes, its periodic eruptions cast this fiery, hellish glow over the sunken ruins, illuminating them with molten lava. It created this terrifying yet undeniably magnificent spectacle, raw natural power, reclaiming human history in the crushing depths. A really potent symbol, maybe, for Nemo's own view of nature versus civilization.
And Captain Nemo's operations extended even to exploiting this sunken world, didn't they? He wasn't just observing. He had discovered and was actively mining submarine coal seams down there.
Indeed. Nemo revealed another incredible secret. Within the caldera of an extinct submarine volcano, a sort of lake imprisoned by a circle of walls, he had discovered vast deposits, essentially entire forests embedded during the geological periods, now mineralized and transformed into coal.
Underwater coal mines.
Exactly. This was his inexhaustible fuel source. This submarine coal provided the crucial raw material needed to produce the sodium that powered his electrical systems, perpetually fueling the Nautilus. His own men, Aronnax observed, acted as miners, diligently extracting this vital resource from the deep volcanic seams.
So the Nautilus was fueled by coal mine from an underwater volcano near Atlantis. That's quite a sentence.
It is. And Aronnax noted this one bizarre, poignant detail. Seeing small, slightly perfumed violets still somehow growing amidst the volcanic lava and coal dust down there, a tiny, fragile touch of surface life inexplicably flourishing in this deep, dark, industrial, and highly anomalous setting. It just underscored Nemo's incredible ability to create this entirely self-sufficient world, utterly removed from, yet secretly exploiting, the resources of the Earth both above and below the waves. And even when navigating the vast, bewildering, almost stagnant expanse of the Sargasso Sea, or facing the extreme, life-threatening conditions of the Earth's poles, Nemo's relentless presence, his singular vision, and his underlying, often contradictory resolve were profoundly evident.
The Sargasso Sea, that sounds almost like a mythical place itself, doesn't it? This vast floating island of seaweed out in the middle of the Atlantic.
It is almost mythical in its description in the text. Aronnax describes encountering this immense bank of kelp and sargassum weed, these berry plants, all accumulated by the slow, circular currents of the Atlantic Gyre, particularly the Gulf Stream, acting like a giant oceanic conveyor belt.
So it's a real place.
Oh yes, a real oceanographic feature. Aronnax calls it a peaceful basin, this calm, vast expanse of interwoven floating vegetation where ships, especially sailing ships, could potentially get trapped. He notes how products of all kinds, flotsam, jetsam, trunks of trees torn from distant mountains, scattered debris from shipwrecks all drift there and get caught, uniting in the center of this least agitated part of the ocean. It's a natural phenomenon, a vast living raft, a true unique ecosystem in the open ocean that few people ever get to see up close.
And then, the Nautilus undertakes perhaps its most audacious journey yet, the voyage to the South Pole. This wasn't just exploration, it was a deliberate, almost defiant act, especially the decision to go under the immense, crushing Antarctic ice cap.
Captain Nemo's ambition truly knew no bounds. This voyage tested the absolute limits of the Nautilus and its crew. On en route, they performed that incredibly deep dive, reaching 16,000 yards, 4 leagues, where the pressure made the hull plates tremble.
Right. And Nemo also displayed that strange selective morality again, didn't he? Regarding whales.
Yes, interestingly. He actively prevented Ned Land from hunting the large baleen whales they encountered in the Southern Ocean, stating curtly it would be only to destroy, and adding that they had nothing to do with the whale oil on board, implying a conservationist stance, or at least a lack of commercial interest. But then later, the Nautilus itself acted as a weapon defending these southern whales from a pack of attacking cachalots, or sperm whales.
Defending them. How?
By ramming the cachalots, using the Nautilus's immense power and deadly spur to attack the predators. After this brutal underwater battle, Nemo stated chillingly, "The Nautilus is not a butcher's knife."
So violence is okay when he deems it necessary, or perhaps justified by some code, protecting the gentle whales from the predatory ones.
It shows a complex, perhaps contradictory viewpoint. He harbors this deep vengeance against humanity, or certain parts of it, yet holds this profound reverence, even protectiveness, towards specific aspects of oceanic life. He appoints himself judge and protector in the undersea realm.
But the South Pole journey itself was truly epic, wasn't it? Pushing the vessel and its crew to their absolute limits. How did it begin?
It began as they sailed further south, encountering the telltale ice blink, this white, dazzling band of reflected light on the horizon that announced the presence of an immense ice pack ahead, a phenomenon very familiar to Arctic whalers. But Nemo's plan was utterly audacious, unlike anything any whaler had ever conceived: to go under the ice barrier, to navigate beneath the frozen cap itself, to reach the geographical South Pole, something no human had ever attempted or even thought possible.
How thick was the ice they had to go under?
Aronnax himself, the scientist, provided the chilling calculation. He explained the physics of icebergs. For 1 foot of iceberg visible above the sea, there are 3 below it, meaning a 300-foot-high iceberg, which they saw, would extend a terrifying 900 feet down into the crushing depths. The Nautilus then bravely began tunneling under miles and miles of this crushing ice, facing the terrifying prospect of dwindling air supplies as they remained submerged for days on end. The very air within the sealed vessel became thin, stale, and stifling.
And, against all odds, they actually made it. They reached the pole. A monumental achievement, which Nemo then claimed entirely for himself.
They did. On March 20th, after navigating through immense, perilous underwater ice formations, huge submerged bergs, and with their air reservoirs dwindling to dangerously low levels, Nemo skillfully steered the Nautilus through a small opening and surfaced precisely at the geographical South Pole.
What did he do? Plant a flag?
Essentially, yes. He, Aronnax, Ned, and Conseil disembarked onto the ice. Then, with chilling audacity, Nemo took possession of the South Pole in my own name. He unfurled a black banner emblazoned with a gold N, planting it firmly into the frozen ice.
A black flag with an N.
His personal standard. And then he declared, with this sense of almost divine pronouncement, "Adieu, sun, disappear, and let a night of 6 months spread its shadows over my new domains." It was a monumental achievement of navigation and engineering, but also this profound symbolic act, asserting his dominion over a previously untouched part of the globe, reinforcing his absolute severance from the surface world and its nations.
But this incredible, ambitious feat of reaching the South Pole is almost immediately followed by a terrifying accident, something that truly tests the limits of the Nautilus and the very survival of everyone trapped inside.
Yes, the triumph was incredibly short-lived. The very next day, March 22nd, Aronnax was violently woken by a violent shock that threw him from his bed. An enormous block of ice, a whole mountain estimated at over 1,000 feet deep, had suddenly, catastrophically turned over, capsizing onto them. It completely trapped the Nautilus beneath thousands upon thousands of tons of crushing ice.
Trapped under an iceberg.
Exactly. It was a terrifying caprice of nature, as Aronnax called it. Something even Nemo, with all his genius and foresight, could not have predicted or prevented. The vessel was pinned, helpless, the entire crew utterly at the mercy of the immense, shifting, groaning ice surrounding them.
How did they possibly manage to survive that, being trapped under an iceberg? The air quality must have become the critical immediate factor.
It became an immediate, terrifying crisis. Captain Nemo, grim but calm, confirmed their dire prognosis regarding the air supply. After tomorrow, they will be empty, referring to their rapidly depleting compressed air reservoirs. Suffocation became a very real, imminent threat. A slow, agonizing end trapped in the icy darkness.
What could they even do?
The crew, including a reluctant but desperate Ned Land, were put to work with pickaxes. They had to try and manually dig a tunnel upwards through the ice above them, working tirelessly in the increasingly frigid, shrinking air inside the Nautilus, driven by sheer, primal desperation. Aronnax describes feeling his own breathing grow weak, his lungs burning, his brain becoming stupefied from the severe lack of oxygen. He was experiencing the chilling, debilitating onset of asphyxiation. It was a frantic race against time and against their own failing bodies.
And the dramatic escape. It sounds like it was the desperate last-ditch gamble, relying entirely on the sheer brute strength of the Nautilus itself.
It absolutely was. With only a few feet of ice separating them from the life-giving surface air, and suffocation literally moments away for some, Nemo ordered a risky maneuver. The Nautilus was positioned at an oblique angle, lowering its stern and raising its powerful beak towards the ice ceiling.
Like pointing a battering ram upwards.
Exactly. Then, impelled by its powerful screw, it attacked the ice field from beneath like a formidable battering ram, using its immensely strong spun to smash upwards into the weakening ice barrier they'd partially dug through. It broke through the final layer by repeatedly backing and then rushing forward against the field, which gradually gave way, a titanic struggle of machine against nature.
Did it work?
Finally, with a deafening roar that echoed through the hull, the Nautilus shot forwards on the ice field that crushed beneath its weight. The main hatch panel was opened. Aronnax says, one might say torn off. And the pure air came in abundance to all parts of the Nautilus. They had escaped by the sheer force and brilliant design of the vessel itself. But it had been an absolutely terrifying brush with oblivion, trapped under the ice at the bottom of the world. So having witnessed all these technological marvels, these breathtaking natural wonders, and these truly terrifying near catastrophes, Professor Aronnax's understanding of Captain Nemo becomes, well, deeper, certainly, but also profoundly more unsettling. At the same time, Ned Land's desperate desire for freedom just grows stronger and stronger, making the incredible Nautilus feel less like a sanctuary of wonders and more like a gilded, inescapable prison.
Ned Land's frustration is longing for land. It must get almost palpable, right? Especially as they started sailing closer to more familiar waters. The very thought of home becoming this unbearable ache for him.
Absolutely. Ned Land's nostalgia, his yearning for solid ground, for his home, it grew to this almost unbearable intensity. Particularly the text notes, as the Nautilus neared Nova Scotia and the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, his native territory.
So close yet so far.
Exactly. He became increasingly agitated, restless. He felt his old ideas of fishing resurfacing, constantly lamenting being bound to these steel plates. He declared flatly with raw frustration that he'd had more than enough of the South Pole and had absolutely no intention of following Nemo on a similar trip to the North Pole, which Nemo was apparently contemplating. His desire for freedom just became this all-consuming fire within him.
And this growing unrest, not just from Ned but likely shared by Conseil too, finally prompted Aronnax to do something risky. To directly confront Captain Nemo about their liberty. After 7 long, isolating months trapped aboard the Nautilus, that must have been a moment of profound truth and immense personal risk for Aronnax.
It was huge. Aronnax, acting as the reluctant but necessary voice for his companions, finally posed the question that had been hanging in the air for months. For 7 months we have been here on board, he said, and I ask you today if your intention is to keep us here always.
What did Nemo say? Was there any softening?
Absolutely none. Nemo's response was as unwavering and as chillingly final as ever. Whoever enters the Nautilus, he stated flatly, must never quit it. He declared them quite simply, prisoners of war. When Aronnax protested, arguing for their freedom, pleading their case, Nemo merely called his keeping them alive clemency. He reminded Aronnax with cold precision that he still held the power to plunge you into the depths of the ocean at any moment.
So, no hope of release.
Nemo emphasized that keeping them wasn't for his own pleasure or company, it was purely for his own protection. In retaining you, he told Aronnax, it is not you whom I guard, it is myself. His secret, his hidden existence, the very reality of the Nautilus was paramount. It could never be revealed to the surface world. Their knowledge made them a permanent liability.
The tension just builds from there, doesn't it? It builds to this almost unbearable crescendo, culminating in an act of profound and terrifying vengeance. Nemo had shown these glimmers of compassion before, even that strange environmental protectiveness with the whales. But this was something else entirely, a much darker side, finally, fully revealed.
It was indeed. This was the moment Nemo seemed to shed any remaining pretense of being just a detached scientific explorer or a benevolent ruler of the deep. First, almost as a prelude, the Nautilus demonstrated its absolute invulnerability by sailing through the heart of a monstrous hurricane off Long Island, New York. It weathered the colossal waves and winds effortlessly, a chilling confirmation of its unyielding design and power.
Showing off its strength.
Perhaps. Then, shortly after, they encountered the solemn, submerged wreck of the Avenger. This was a real French warship that had famously, bravely, sunk itself in 1794 during a battle with the British, rather than surrender. It went down with all 356 sailors choosing death over capture. Visiting this site felt like a powerful, almost sacred reminder of defiance, sacrifice, and perhaps foreshadowed Nemo's own capacity for ultimate destructive resolve.
And then not long after that symbolic visit, a real hostile warship appears and actually opens fire upon the Nautilus. What was Nemo's reaction to being directly attacked, knowing his vessel was essentially impervious?
Nemo's demeanor became described as chillingly calm, almost serene, as this unidentified warship fired its cannons. The shots were completely useless, of course, just ricocheting harmlessly off the Nautilus's fixed steel hull. But a profound, terrible resolve seemed to settle upon Nemo's face.
What did he say?
He stated, his voice low but filled with this icy determination. "Strike, mad vessel, shower your useless shot, and then you will not escape the spur of the Nautilus. But," he added ominously, "it is not here that you shall perish. I would not have your ruins mingle with those of the Avenger." He was deliberately choosing the time and the place for his retribution, denying his victim even the dignity of sinking near heroes.
The ramming itself. It's described with such brutal efficiency, a shocking act of deliberate, calculated, destructive force. Aronnax's horror must have been overwhelming.
It was depicted as horrific, a scene of pure, cold, methodical destruction. The Nautilus, accelerating to immense speed, used its massive steel spur and, as Aronnax graphically describes it, passed through the mass of the vessel like a needle through sailcloth.
Just sliced right through it.
Instantly fatal. Aronnax watched in horror from the saloon window as the warship broke apart and sank rapidly, its crew desperately trying to escape the vortex of its watery grave. He felt, he writes, an insurmountable horror for Captain Nemo, witnessing such calculated, pitiless brutality.
How did Aronnax process that? Being a witness to mass murder, essentially.
His reflection on the act is damning, revealing his profound moral conflict and disgust. He wrote, "Whatever Nemo had suffered at the hands of these men or the nation they represented, he had no right to punish thus. He had made me, if not an accomplice, at least a witness of his vengeance." This act definitively shifted Nemo in Aronnax's eyes. From enigmatic explorer to a terrifying, avenging force, a self-appointed judge, jury, and executioner enacting his own twisted form of justice upon the world he had rejected. And the final moments described in the text are just this chaotic, desperate escape attempt, happening amidst the terrifying power of a maelstrom, leaving Captain Nemo and the ultimate fate of the incredible Nautilus perpetually shrouded in mystery.
Ned Land, seeing a last fleeting opportunity as they neared land, finally initiated his escape plan. After all they had endured, was it actually successful? Did they get away?
Yes. In the midst of a violent storm, near the notoriously treacherous shores of the Norwegian coast, known for its powerful currents and whirlpools, Ned Land, along with Aronnax and Conseil, seized their chance. They saw land, however dangerous the waters. It was now or never.
What about Nemo? Was he aware? What was he doing?
Just before their perilous escape into the Nautilus's small dinghy, Aronnax overheard Captain Nemo inside the main saloon. He was playing his grand organ, huge, melancholic chords echoing through the vessel, and Aronnax heard him murmuring what sounded like his last words, perhaps a plea, perhaps a statement of profound remorse or despair. "Almighty God, enough, enough."
Enough killing, enough suffering, enough living.
It's ambiguous, but deeply poignant. The three companions managed to slip out, launching the small boat, just as the Nautilus itself was caught in what Aronnax describes as a terrible combat with a maelstrom, a gigantic, inescapable, dizzying whirlpool, a force of nature perhaps even the mighty Nautilus could not ultimately withstand.
What happened to them in the boat?
The boat, still initially attached by its rope, was dragged along with the submarine into the terrifying spiral. Aronnax describes being carried along with giddy speed, suffering from sickly giddiness as they were spun violently, relentlessly towards the vortex's crushing center, facing an utterly uncertain destiny in the churning chaos.
So what does this all mean for us, for you, the listener, hundreds of years later, having heard this incredible, harrowing account through Professor Aronnax's eyes? What are the enduring takeaways from this truly unparalleled journey?
Well, Aronnax, along with Ned and Conseil, somehow miraculously survived the maelstrom's grip. They were washed ashore, exhausted but alive. He reflects on his extraordinary, almost unbelievable experience. In less than 10 months, he calculates, I have crossed 20,000 leagues in that submarine tour of the world, which has revealed so many wonders. But the ultimate feat of Captain Nemo and his magnificent, terrible vessel, the Nautilus, that remains utterly unknown. Lost, presumably, to the swirling depths of that Norwegian maelstrom, swallowed by the very ocean that Nemo so deeply revered and commanded. His story endures as one of boundless ingenuity, profound mystery, terrible secrets, and ultimately, perhaps tragic vengeance.
But Aronnax, despite all the horror he witnessed, despite his own imprisonment, he holds on to this rather profound, almost hopeful final thought for his enigmatic captor. a wish that seems to transcend the terror of Nemo's final acts of vengeance.
Yes, remarkably, he expresses this enduring, almost compassionate hope for the man who held him captive. He writes, I also hope that his powerful vessel has conquered the sea at its most terrible gulf, and that the Nautilus has survived where so many other vessels have been lost. He wants the machine, the marvel, to live on.
And for Nemo himself.
His wish for Captain Nemo is equally profound, a desperate plea, really, for redemption and peace for that tormented soul. May hatred be appeased in that savage heart. May the judge disappear and the philosopher continue the peaceful exploration of the sea. It's this poignant wish that the incredible mind behind the Nautilus, the brilliant scientist and explorer, might somehow find peace, a purpose beyond vengeance, a path back to wonder.
And he concludes with a final thought, doesn't he? Tying his whole unbelievable experience back to this timeless question that's puzzled humanity for millennia.
He does. He reflects, if his Nemo's destiny be strange, it is also sublime. Have I not understood it myself? Have I not lived 10 months of this unnatural life? And then he connects it directly to that ancient question asked by Ecclesiastes 3,000 years ago. That which is far off and exceeding deep, who can find it out? Aronnax suggests that perhaps only two men, himself and Captain Nemo, have truly glimpsed the answer, having journeyed through those profound, previously unimagined depths.
And that concludes our journey through this remarkable account of the Nautilus and its enigmatic commander, Captain Nemo. What a testament to both human ingenuity pushed to its absolute furthest limits and also to the enduring, profound power of the unknown that lies beneath the waves, a world revealed as both incredibly beautiful and deeply terrifying.
We certainly hope this exploration has given you a richer understanding of what is truly a complex character, driven by genius and despair, and offered a glimpse into a world far beneath our feet, a world of breathtaking wonders, yes, but also profound horrors, utterly unbound by the laws and conventions we take for granted on the surface.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Uncanny Valley podcast.